Hello, Justine DeAndrea here with Bible Journaling Ministries creative team, and today we're going to learn how to use acrylic paint to make a weathered barnyard look in our Bibles using the printables of 1 Peter 1 through 3. You'll also need acrylic paint. I used raw umber, a green that I liked that kind of matched the leaves, a antique parchment, which is an off-white, and then some black, and then a 3/4 inch to 1/2 inch flat brush. And that's what we're going to be using today to do our antique background boards on our page. So if you're ready, let's go ahead and get started. I wanted to take the time to show you in a mixed media book as well as in the Bible. This is a technique that you really can't think too much about, and it takes a little bit of getting used to trust yourself. So, sorry about that. I'm going to start using the parchment white or antique parchment, and the key here is to make sure that you keep your paint wet. If it starts to dry out on your paper, add a little bit of water, but you don't want to keep it extremely wet. Then you're going to take a little bit of the raw umber or brown if you have a brown, and we're going to just add some into the parchment paint. The great thing about this is you saw that I put a whole big blob of brown on there, but I'm going over it with the white, so that kind of corrects it a little bit, and you're able to correct your mistakes on this. So basically right now you can add a little bit of white if you want, but because of my I'm here in Florida and everything dries out so quick, I'm having a little bit of issue keeping my paint wet. So the whole thing is you want to blend your paint, but you don't want to muddy it, and you want to see the distressed look in the paint itself. So just kind of play with it. And on this particular page and in my Bible, I am not doing a structured board. I'm kind of keeping it open-ended on this all four corners. So I'm not worried about that part of it. And you're just going to go in one direction. You're going to go up and down horizontally, and just get it to where it kind of just looks a little distressed. Then what you can do is, as you're going along, you can grab a little bit more of the raw umber and then hold your brush straight up and down, so you make more like of a line than of a shading. If you mess up, or if you don't like the way it looks, go ahead and cover it up. And that's kind of why we're doing it. I'm doing it here just to kind of show you. And then we're going to take some black, and then we're going to make the kind of like the little spaces between the board, and I'll show you that shortly. So since we're doing it in the Bible also, I just wanted to speed up this part here so I don't bore you to death. But this is where I'm taking the black and the raw umber, and I'm kind of making the space between the slats, and I didn't measure them out. You can measure them out if you want. I kind of did it by eye. And then just go through and maybe dry brush, which means just taking a little bit of most of the paint off and going over the paint that's on the page, just to kind of give it more of a highlight. So I haven't done this in a while, so this is literally was a practice page for me. I wasn't too happy exactly the way this came out, but I wanted to show you so that you can see the process of it twice. And you don't really need the black, but the black does kind of like highlight it a little bit. See how it kind of just brought the lines out a little bit more. So I switched over to my illustrated Bible, my mega Bible here, and I'm going to do the same thing. If you're using your smaller Bible, of course you want to do it on a smaller scale. And it happens that the actual page I'm doing is on the reverse side of 1 Peter because I already used my 1 Peter page. So I'm over on James 5. So if you use the illustrated Bible and you're like, what is she doing? It's because I used that other page. And as you can see, I had some bleed through from the page that I did on the reverse side. And acrylic paint just goes ahead and covers that up. So remember that if you ever have an issue and you don't want to see the bleed through. Okay, so we're going to go ahead. I'm going to add a little bit more of the parchment, because remember that we want to go ahead and make sure the paint stays wet. Now we're going to go ahead and just paint some of the umber in there, just as you would normally paint, just kind of scattering it around. And if you put too much, then you can always go back and add a little bit of the parchment. You do have to be very careful depending on what Bible you're using. So for this particular one, it did get pretty wet, and I had to be careful not to rip my page. So you might want to gesso, or I mean, yeah, you might want to gesso before you start, or just be very careful and just, you know, if you're using the Bible that's thinner, just make sure that you're paying attention to that. So I'm deciding to take the umber and just kind of mark out my slats in the beginning right now, because I kind of wanted to see the spacing of it. And again, I'm not worrying about keeping it straight edges. I just sometimes don't like that look. I don't know. I like to be more abstract, I guess, or whatever. And you just need to take the time to kind of picture how weathered wood would look in your mind. You can also go look on the internet or whatever if you want to grab a picture of some weathered wood to kind of give you an idea of what it looks. So it's just a bunch of, you know, colors. You can even add a little bit of gray in there if you want it to. That might look nice, a gray background. But like I said, I'm basically using the parchment and the umber, and I am going to put a fourth color in there just to give it a little highlight and on the wood, just to kind of make it look a little bit more weathered. If you mess up, remember, just take your parchment and go over it. But it's really fun to learn this technique. And there's so many different ways to do it, honestly. If you looked it up on YouTube, you'd probably find a lot. And actually, if you're doing it and your paper's getting too wet, you might want to stop and dry it up a little bit and then come back. And then you can always add a little bit of water to your paint to loosen it up. But you can also just use the dry brush effect. So I would probably recommend that if your paper is so thin, to go ahead and base it with the parchment and then come back and dry brush over it with burnt umber, and then go ahead and put your lines in there. Remember to also go vertical with your brush to make some lines in there. You can't go wrong, honestly, with the weathered look. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm using a green that kind of goes with the green of the leaves. And I'm going to just dry brush some over it. You don't need a lot, just a little bit. And when I mean dry brush, you basically want to wipe off the paint. You don't want much paint on there at all. And then just lightly run your brush vertically over the lines, just to give it a little extra color. And I like this, what the book did, because it actually, I like the crinkles in the page. It makes it look really interesting and gives it some more texture. So don't be afraid of that. This is your journey. This is your time with the Lord. And then I'm adding just a little bit of highlight of the black. And if you mess that up, what do? You go over it again. That's why practicing really does help. And I really hope that you guys, if you try this technique, will share it, because it's a fun one. And you can use different colors too. I've used different pastel colors in the past. Each board was a different pastel color, so. But I think you can see there some of the green that I put in there. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and dry this up a bit. That's one of my very first ones on the left hand side that I did for Bible Journaling Ministries creative team. So cool to look back and see the different pages. So I cut most of my pieces out that I want to use. Because I'm using the Illustrated Bible, I decided to use the really big graphics for the First Peter, and that is actually one of the reasons why Tracy does the big ones, is for the Illustrated Bible. But also because I'm putting it on the James 2nd page, I'm going to go ahead and cut out the Bible margins so that this way it just reminds me of that I'm using this page for 1 Peter 1:3. And I didn't get to read that, so I'm going to do that now. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who according to his great mercy became the Father of us again to a living hope by the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. How awesome is that? So I'm going to just rearrange the flowers. Pretty simple page today, I have to say. Nothing too crazy. I'm keeping it simple for you guys. Using the Living Hope little banner, and then the really big cross. I'm using my art glitter glue. I just like to use that better than a glue stick, but you can use whatever you want. And I'm just going to place down my graphics. Oops, sorry. I was trying to move something. And instead of picking up my flowers, because I really like the placement of them, I'm just going to put the glue underneath and just do it that way, because I didn't want to mess up the placement. It is exactly where I want it. You can always add the hearts from the printable too. I just kind of wanted to keep it plain. I wanted more of the wood to show through. The really great thing about the printables also is that, I mean, you have so many that you can do. Two Bible, pages if you want. If, God might speak to you in a different way on a different day to use the graphics in a different verse even. I mean, I think that's really cool. Like if he did that and you just set the graphics aside and then at a later date you remember you have them, and then you can always use them for a different Bible verse in your Bible. So I'm really liking the way it looks, although I do feel like I need like washi or something. And I was grabbing some regular washi tape, and then I was like, oh yeah, that's right, we have washi on the printable. So I'm going to go ahead and use that, and I'm going to put that on the bottom kind of just to frame it a little bit better. And do not forget that if you are not part of Momentum, you can always go ahead and purchase this in the store at BibleJournalingMinistries.com. You don't have to be a part of Momentum to get it, but it's an extra kit. Although being part of Momentum is kind of awesome. You get a lot. She gives you a lot of information, techniques. I mean, I love sharing the 10-day free Bible study course, beginner journaling course. Anyway, so we're going to put that there. That also reminds me that we're doing 1 Peter 1:3. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to lay that down, and then I realized that on my margin, the margin, I cut off some of the black, so I'm going to go over that, and I'm going to just use a marker, a Posca marker, to do some lining. So thank you for watching. I hope that you try to do this. I hope this encourages you to go into the Word and study a little bit more, spend a little more time in the Word, and be sure to visit us over at BibleJournalingMinistries.com and post your finished product if you would like to share it with us. We would love to see it. So thank you again, and we will see you next time.